Welcome to the Agency Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal. And today we are joined by Terry Samuels, a veteran SEO expert and co-founder of Salterra Digital Services. Terry is also the mastermind behind SEO Spring Trainings, a major SEO industry event. Terry, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes. So let's talk about a little bit about your background and experience for our listeners so that they can connect. So can you tell us about your journey into SEO and how you founded Salterra?
Sure. Our agency Salterra is 14 years old. I've been a software developer since 1990, so a long time. I took a break from software and went into flipping houses and doing all kinds of stuff, and came back into the agency life 14 years ago. And I was heavy into development. That was back in HTML, CSS days, Dreamweaver, all that kind of fun stuff. And then about 3 years after starting that, I had one of my clients come up to me and ask me to look at this thing that she was paying for every month. And I didn't even know what SEO was, or even having a thing. We kind of knew about optimization, but it wasn't with any direct reason. It was just more to make maybe the website more functionable or something like that. It had nothing to do with search engines. Anyway, so I looked at it, gave her a little bit of pointers and stuff, really didn't want anything to do with it. And then I had another friend of mine come to me at church and said his website completely disappeared from the internet. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be cool. So this one intrigued me because I'm a technical guy. So I wanted to dig in and find out what had happened to this domain, everything. This is right about when Google's first animal came out. And after interviewing him, I found out he was buying backlinks like they were back then. You paid $2,500 and you get some porn links, you get some gambling links, you get some the links. That's what people did. I really learned SEO from the negative side, or how to get people out of penalty or out of a problem, so to speak. And it took us 13 months to get him back. And when he came back, he had literally over in 48 hour period, thousands of keywords ranking. So, it wasn't a slow thing. It was just like, boom, we finally got what we needed to get done. I live and died in the disavow tool. That was the only tool that we really had at that time to go after stuff like this. So that was kind of like my journey into it. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty cool. So I took him on as a client now to help him, obviously with more ranking. He was a big health insurance company. And I just started doing other stuff for people around the church, and, found out I was doing stuff for the church itself, and found out that I was pretty good at it, and decided to go down that journey. So I've been doing it about 11 years, I think, solid, and then I dabbled in it a couple months before that. But yeah, it's like a passion of mine. So.
Okay. And I know, so this is around 2012 when the Penguin update hit everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
I lost my sleep over some clients as well. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't even know what it was. Like I said, I wasn't in that realm. I was back then. I was a HIPAA certified software developer, so I was doing a lot of HIPAA projects, and those didn't have anything to do with search or Google or anything.
Right.
They were more membership type things. But that was a passion that I loved, it being in the medical space. I don't even think the HIPAA certification is a thing anymore, but back then it was. But it was interesting when I started to look and see, wow, okay, so you do have to get into this list of companies in order to get phone calls. And it was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So that's why we kind of, stepped into it big time. But yeah, the animal update, that was interesting because I didn't see hardly any of that after this one client. Until about a year later, I started seeing more and more of it. So it really seemed like it was kind of like a blanket thing, but the blanket missed a bunch of people. So that was another rabbit hole I went down to is, okay, well, why did this website get affected and this one didn't? What happened here? And, did Google just miss it, or is it going to come back in a couple months? And so back then Google obviously didn't have a bandwidth issue like it does today. But it was interesting to start to figure out going, okay, well, why is this and not this? That's probably my favorite thing about SEO is, why is this guy ranking and this one's not? I've done, you hear the stories. I've done so much for this and this guy's doing nothing and he's
Yeah.
ranking. And so that's the side of the SEO that I really started digging into was, why is one thing happening compared to another? And I built a network of about 50 testing sites. So, because that's what I was trying to figure out. I was trying to mimic why this website's ranking and this one isn't. Even as far as cloaking, I was doing a lot of cloaking back then just to see if I can get the same kind of movement. I wasn't going after obviously placement as far as first page. I just wanted to see movement. Which one caused the movement and which direction did it move? And that, the testing of it is where I really jumped into SEO because that's how I started doing schema 7 years ago. Because nobody was doing it. So, and that was all through my testing sites and going, oh, wow, hey, here's something new I've never seen before. Let's go see what I can do with that.
So you do you have those testing sites or other testing sites still around?
Yeah, I've actually got probably close to over 100 testing sites now.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. So
For different things. So obviously I've got testing sites for e-com. I've got testing sites for local. Yeah, I've got, I don't do as much testing anymore as much as I used to. But we still, obviously, I have people send me their backlinks and want me to test their backlinks and do stuff like that. But it's not like a everyday thing like it was, 4 years
right.
ago. So, but they're all still there. They're all still viable. Every time there's a algo update, I go look at a bunch of them that I knew, did they get affected or not get affected. I've got a site that's just schema only. There's no public content on it at all, and so I always go check that one first. What happened with this one? And it's amazing. It keeps going up every algo update. But it's just that's the kind of stuff that I like to see. I don't pay attention to Facebook and everything, and as far as, oh, there's an update, did anybody get hit? Well, I mean, that's such a broad question. You might not got a hit because of the update. The timing might just be the same.
Yeah.
So
Right.
but
Right. So over to the next question. So now, you started that early. What were some of the early SEO strategies that have drastically changed over time, and how did you adapt to those changes?
um, I think the changes aren't changes as far as don't do this anymore or do this now type of thing. I think what's happening nowadays is I think obviously I've been on a content train for a long time. I think content is going to be not just today, but in the future, the most important thing. So the challenge with backlinks, and I'm a backlink guy. I've been selling backlinks for 8 years, but I see the problem with backlinks now is the time it takes to see results. Where you used to be able to test a backlink and do the 30-day, maybe 45-day rule to see something. Now it's more like 3 or 4 months because of Google's bandwidth problem. They've got a problem. And if people are not paying attention to the bandwidth problem and how often we get our websites crawled, you need to be watching and trying to figure that stuff out because that's our biggest hindrance right now. And that's why we can't tell clients, hey, I can rank you in 3 months. Not anymore. Now it's 6 to 9 to 12, mainly because we're fighting for spots. When I did it, when we were in Myrtle Beach together, I just did research the day before my presentation. And, back then, what was it, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was a website every 3 seconds or every 3 minutes. Now it's a website every 1 minute. I just checked yesterday. So that's how much content's being put into the system. And Google's got to do something with it, and the other search engines. We talked about Google as, because they're the gorilla in the room, but we all have to start paying attention to that. So I really think that's why content, because I can see changes in content much quicker than I can with backlinks.
Okay.
And so that's why I think content's being paid. Well, the last, 75% of the last updates over the last year were all content related.
Right.
We had Eat, we had Eat, we had helpful content, we had all these type of things. And so now people have
I
to
know.
get
Right.
better with content. So, but yeah, so I think that's the difference. And content was important, 3 or 4 years ago, but it Google didn't need as much to make a decision. Back then, 300 or 400 words on a page, that was, man, you were gold, because we were all paying for content. We were buying $15 a page for 400 or 500 words. That's what we were all doing. And you can't do content that way today. Obviously, just because of, Google wants to see, it's a content machine. Google wants to see content. So one of the biggest updates last year was the light content update. People don't realize that if you have old blogs or old pages that are 300 or 400 words, kind of need to do something with those because they're probably being ignored. So, and that's what I think. And I think that's going to be the future of SEO anyways, is content. I think backlinks are always going to be there. But I don't think backlinks are going to be like, I don't see, like my agency, I spend probably 30% of what I was spending 2 years ago on backlinks. So now we've just become this content machine and we're getting backlinks through that. So you write good content that helps people, that's siloed correctly, in clusters, you're going to do some amazing things. So.
Right. Now, so you started that early. Did you have any mentors or influencers in the SEO industry who helped shape your approach, and how did that impact your work or impacted you?
I mean, the first two people I paid attention to were Matt and Brad Callen, the Callen brothers. I learned from them because they did SEO the way I thought SEO was at the beginning. And I thought SEO was the beginning is you have a product or you have a service and you do everything you can to get that product or service on the first page. Then you go to the next product or service. Then you go to the next product or service. And they did that more on the e-com side. They would buy a pallet full of stuff and they would rank that stuff, some black hats, some, all the different, back then it wasn't really hats, but, and then they would go on to the next thing. And so, but I think where it really changed for me, was when Rand Fishkin started doing his Whiteboard Fridays. I think that's when I started paying attention to, because I was just dabbling when I started. I was doing SEO for clients. We were doing very well, but it wasn't something I was looking to kind of build a whole division on. And I think starting to watch the Whiteboard Fridays with Rand, that was probably the kickoff point to deciding that I'm going to do an agency over this. So, and those are the three that probably had the most influence on me at the beginning. And then of course, I meet Ted Gabaitis, Clint Butler, Kyle Roof, all these guys in the process. And those are my jam. I mean, I'm a technical guy. You want to talk design and colors, that's my wife, Elizabeth. But and so those, I really get into the technical side of it, especially things that we can do, that other people aren't. That's like schema, for instance. But yeah, it's I think that's how I got my start. And those are the three people that I probably credit with at least getting me in the gate as pushing it out. Because we didn't really have much in YouTube. We didn't really have much in Facebook. Facebook was so new. Most of my friends were realtors because I just came out of the house flipping industry. So, it wasn't really, but I started finding people, and then I'd ask people like Ted, hey, where can I go learn more? All this type of stuff. And, so I'm still today a machine as far as learning. So I still, people send me new software all the time to look at and test and give my feedback. And there's software out there that is just blowing my mind right now. It's just like, wow, this is cool. So, again, that's kind of the technical side. I don't care how the website looks, but if I can build a killer website pretty quickly, that's going to rank. Okay. That's my jam. So,
okay. All right. Now, how do you think, how has the SEO industry evolved since you started? Are they still same, or with the Google changes, has the SEO industry also evolved?
I think the biggest thing that's changed SEO is it's a very easy industry to get into. It's a very easy industry to start charging people money. That is the negative side of SEO right now. I do a lot of audits for a lot of people, a lot of agencies, and there's still a whole bunch of people that are just either not paying attention or they're not doing it. Doing it right is one thing, but doing it at all, I think, is the thing that upsets me the most about our current industry. Is they're just not doing nothing. They're just taking the money and pocketing it, and you can stream a business owner along for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or months. As long as they're not paying attention and they're paying attention to the PDF reports that you're sending. You can make some decent money without really helping anybody, and that's probably my biggest pet peeve is, stop hurting people, obviously. But then I think Facebook and social media has done a negative slant for SEO. I think people are relying on that information without testing. I think testing has kind of gone away to the wayside. There's still a bunch of people that test that I know. We all have our conversations together, but some of the stuff I see in some of these Facebook groups, I'm just like, no, what the hell are you stop. And then all of a sudden you're in an argument with somebody that just, what the hell. So I think people need to get, if you're serious about this business, you need to get out of the groups and you need to have at least your own site that you're testing on. Build your own website, build one, and go out and rank it. Figure out how to rank it. And then, but don't all of a sudden assume because you rank one, you can rank others, because they're all different, so it doesn't matter. You can have 15 plumbers, but if they're in 15 different cities, they're all going to be different. So,
right.
And that's the biggest thing. But I do think the biggest things that's kind of changed is that it's the education that's out there, good or bad, I think is the big difference. People just need to figure out who to follow, what videos to watch, what groups to join. And then, again, test stuff. I'm doing an audit right now, and I'd tell you what, this agency needs to be fired. Just who else are you doing this to is my next question, because they're hurting these people. These are people that are trying to put food on the table for their families. And, and I think that's the biggest thing is if you don't have that compassion to help people in this business, you're going to hurt people. And that's the biggest thing I'm against. I think that's the biggest change. And going forward, unfortunately, I don't see it changing because, again, it's a very easy industry to get into. You can pop up and get a business card and a Facebook page and a basic website and say, hey, I do SEO, and charge $400 or $500 to start out. It's a really easy system to get into, but and I get that. But if you don't have a plan and your goal is not to improve your business and your businesses you're working for, then just stop. Just stop. And that's it's upsetting, especially when you got to be the one to tell this business owner that just spent $50,000 the past year that I've got to not only undo everything they've done because it didn't do any good or even caused more harm, but now I've got to charge them for that. So a lot of people that come to me, I've got to charge them just to get them back to zero. Now we can start ranking, and and a lot of people don't realize it takes 10 times as long to fix something than it does to do it right. So, especially if your website's so bad that Google hasn't even been there in months, then how are you going to change that? What are you going to do to make sure, hey, Google, not only come back, but come back and see all the changes and differences we are now. It's not a website with 10,000 404 errors and all the other things that we see. But so I think bad SEO is the worst thing about our industry.
So, and of course, as everybody says, a lot of people claim they have done, but if you check, when was this same strategy? When have you implemented it? Somebody would say never, and somebody say maybe 2 years back. So nobody's current, and they're going to be selling those. So I come across a lot of those daily myself.
Yeah, exactly. And and the people like you and I in this industry, that's unfortunately, we're typically the one that has to give the bad news, and sometimes it's not fun, Right. I had a lady come to us for SEO, and she just spent $35,000 on a Shopify site. And I'm just like, I can help you, but it's not going to get you the help that you probably really want with a different type of platform. Shopify, as good as it is still very limiting on the technical side, and that's where I look in the technical side. I don't look at the other stuff. And so if I can't manipulate things that I know Google wants me to manipulate, and try to do some secondary stuff to make up for it, again, I just think you're swimming up a stream that's, you're fighting the current, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And then plus you need
I love Shopify. I've got sites on Shopify. So, but unfortunately, we have to have those conversations, and some of them work. Some, I just set the expectations and say, yeah, I can help you, but so I don't fluff things. I don't powder coat things. It is what it is. So, if you want me to help you, I can help you. But if you're on a platform that limits my help, then we just need to know that up front.
Right.
So,
Completely. Yeah. Yeah. So the Shopify is just one example. There is another example when people will come up with the sites with the rendering issues. The site won't even get cached, won't get rendered, and they will keep on expecting us to do the magic. And those server-side rendering, SSR, nobody would have an idea how to fix it. They just built it, and now it's super expensive to fix it.
Oh yeah, 100%. A lot of people don't. And funny little story. When I started out in this business, I was meeting people local. I got into the BNI groups and all that type of stuff. And I'm sitting at Starbucks with a new client of mine, doing the onboarding. I've got a very specific onboarding process. But I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this guy behind me that's selling Squarespace sites. And, he's talking to this, this young lady there, telling her how great this Squarespace and stuff is. And I don't know why. I typically don't do that. I just handed her my business card when I walked out. And I said, just give me a call before you make a decision. Because a lot of people don't realize a lot of these platforms are built on a subdomain system. And they just redirect your subdomain to your domain. Well, if you look at the source code and your domain is never mentioned in there, it's just, your no domain.squarespace.com. That's a problem. Google knows that. And so, I've heard they've kind of alleviated a little bit of that with Squarespace, but most of these sites, Wix, Weebly, they're all on subdomain sites. So look at the source code and see if the code is about you and not about the platform. And that's one of the fastest things I talk to people about. I said, oh, let's just look at the code. Whoa, I'm not even mentioning here. Exactly. That's the problem. It's a beautiful site. I'm sure you built it in a weekend. That's awesome. But, now you've got to get the search engines to like what you did. And they know that. They're not stupid. They're just looking for signals, so they can't read, but they definitely can see all the domains. And they know if it's this subdomain and redirects to this domain. They know all that stuff. So, but
okay. Let's talk a little bit about on-page SEO, and then we're gonna go into silos and schemas as well. So as search engine evolves, what are the biggest myths in the on-page SEO you would like to dispel for our listeners?
The biggest myths that you need to, well, I don't even know if there's myths. There's definitely things that upsets me. So one of the myths is that you always have to have an internal backlink to the homepage. Somebody at some time taught this somewhere, that if you're on if you're on a blog and you're talking about the value of WordPress, and all of a sudden you have, WordPress web design, internal link that goes to your homepage, and you're sitting there and you have these on every page because somebody said you need to send every single inside page back to your homepage. That's probably the biggest mistake that I see, is people doing that. And people don't understand that Google ranks web pages. They don't rank a website. And so, and I use a couple of different analogies. So if I sit there and I just got this timemagazine.com freaking backlink, and I'm going to send it to this inside page that has to do with this articles about that I got this backlink for, and now all of a sudden I'm sending that power back to the homepage. Why'd I do that? Why didn't I have other internal links in there that had other things to do with that same type of topical relevance that would help that link now help these pages? And
Right.
so I really get kind of frustrated when I see things like that. And I ask him, I said, well, who told you to do this? And he said, oh, that's the way I learned to do it. And I said, well, okay, we're going to teach you differently. But I think the biggest myths are, just throwing up content and your content's going to rank. I think those days are over. Um, Automated content, I think, is death personally.
Right.
I think if you're automating content and you don't have a human touch in between it, I think you're really going to regret that situation. And then another thing think is a myth is that once your website's built, you never need to add content again. I get a lot of audits. Even the agencies aren't adding content on a continual basis. And again, Google needs to come back for a reason. If you haven't updated your website in a year, what's it coming back for? What's it going to see when it comes back to your website again? It's probably now in the ignore list because they're just seeing the same old shit every time we go there. So I think those are, I don't know if they're myths, but I do think that
Maybe misconceptions, I would say.
yeah, misconceptions, that would probably be the best thing. And you have a lot of websites out there that are power players, search engine land, search engine journal, that do everything wrong. Don't go to those sites to learn SEO. The only reason they're even up where they're at is because they're power hogs. They're traffic hogs. They get some traffic. They're a very old website, stuff like that. But don't go there and realize they have no silo at all. They have, I think I counted one article. There was 92 internal links outside that article.
Wow.
Whoa. Joe Plumber, don't do that. Be a little bit more strategic in your plan here. But again, it's, that's the biggest thing internal linking in my mind right now is the most important thing in SEO, flat out. Because the old days of writing an article about web design and then having internal links to SEO, internal links to email funnels, internal links to whatever, and you've just not only broke your silo, you've crushed your silo, then I think you're not going to get the results you think you're going to get. So
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing I see. And it's always old content. We've all done it. When I tell this story, Elizabeth and I went to San Diego just to get away and relax. And it was a working weekend for me. And I went to Salterra site, my main site, and went to my old stuff and sat there in total shock about the way my old on-page was from, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I was like, oh my God. So all weekend long, I completely re-siloed Salterra. I got rid of all the light content. I, purged pages that I didn't want anymore. And it just had an immediate result. And so I was kind of kicking myself, but we always talk about agency owners never pay attention to our own websites. That's true. We do now. But I was just in total shock, because that's the way I thought it worked back then. And 2015 is completely different than 2024 is the way we thought what worked compared to what actually works. Right. So, but yeah, I think it's pretty comical when you go back to the older pages and you sit there and go, well, wow, I had 150 words on this page with 7 backlinks or 7 links out to other pages. So it's like, well, this page is not only being ignored, it's probably hurting me. So yeah, I just think people really need to start paying better attention to the content side.
Right.
But yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You are, of course, known for your expertise in the on-page SEO. What are some key elements that websites often overlook? I mean, besides internal link we talked about.
I think that, probably the URL structure is a big one. A lot of people don't pay attention to URL structure, and that's actually the first thing Google sees. And I think if you either under optimized or over optimized, it can have a negative effect. Most of the time we see over optimized. So if it's salterrasite.com / Salterra web design, spends 10 years in Gilbert, Arizona. Well, do I really need the word Salterra in there twice? Do I really need to, pay more attention to, oh, I didn't even include this keyword in this URL structure. So I think that's the biggest thing is people need to pay attention, especially with WordPress. And it all started with WordPress or open source. So because WordPress will just take the title you put in there and that's your URL, or that's your slug. And that's okay, but I think nowadays you need to pay attention to what that slug says. If you're Bob's Plumbing and now your article's about, why Bob's Plumbing is great in Dallas, Texas, now you've just mentioned Bob's Plumbing twice and, all that stuff. So, and of course, back then it wasn't intentional. When we were doing HTML, we had to keep it below 70 characters. We had a rule back then, in the old HTML days, we couldn't have these 250 character URL strings. Google wouldn't read them. And right. So we had to pay attention to the URL when we were building websites back then. So it just seems natural to me, but it is like the second biggest problem I see with websites is URL structure. So, and it's, the under optimize is really can get really bad because you want to find out and make sure Google sucks at guessing. And so you want to make sure that Google is guessing in the right direction. So one of the reasons I love SpyFu, and I have no affiliate with them, but SpyFu, I can go and see, okay, what's ranking on the 10th page, the 9th page, the 8th page. And now you'll start seeing huge jumps and drops, because Google's having a hard time figuring out where to place this stuff. Maybe you've got two pages, cannibalizing each other. Maybe you've got some situations going on. I tell people, paying attention to the first couple pages, page 1, page 2 is great, but you're going to get more information on page 7, 8, 9, and 10, because you're going to see there, well, wow, why is Google even trying to place me for this term? That's not even what we do. Well, you better go to that page and see why it's doing there. And it could be from a knows about with schema. It could be, other factors on our side because we do schema so well. But you have to figure that out and say, okay, well, hey, I don't want to go after this term. It's too outside, this thing. So find out what's on that page where Google's making that guess and just go change that guess. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing people need to pay attention to is where is Google struggling? Why I see almost every website I see has an identity crisis. So, a plumber's website's a plumber's website, but if you do other things that might go along with plumbing, but Google puts it in a different bucket, you need to make sure that you're, slab leak repair. Slab leak repair goes under foundations. It goes under concrete. There's all kinds of things that slab leak repair can go under. You just make sure that it's understanding from the plumber aspect of it. Right. You actually probably don't fix the popped up concrete and all that stuff, but you probably fix the plumbing underneath. And I think that's where people need to be really paying attention to, is so Google better understands your content. That's what it's all about.
Okay. Now, SEO often requires a mix of strategy and creativity. I know you are not more in a creativity side, technical, but still, if you share an example where a creative approach helped solve a complex SEO problem for one of your clients.
You mean creative is like outside the box type stuff?
I would say strategy because SEO is no longer just like building links. It's just not just 2-3 things ticking boxes. So it's like creatively, for example, just an example, if creativity in your example would be when you remove the backlinks on your website when somebody goes to the web design section. So that's kind of a creativity with the strategy. Did you, if an example of your client, you did similar and got good results?
Well, the biggest thing we're doing nowadays, especially as part of a strategy, is we're doing more around clustering. Okay, so when we look at content, the old days of saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I said I'd give you 4 blogs a month. Well, here's your 4 blogs. One about, plumbing, one about, drain leaks, one about toilets, whatever. And right. So when we started looking at, that's all good. That's all fine. But when you start looking at the purpose of content, what do I want this content to do for me? It's no longer a checkbox for a client monthly reporting. If it is, you're going to get buried. And the reason why I say that is because, again, it's all about not just providing content, but becoming an authority in the space. So if I want my plumber to be an authority in the space in tankless hot water heaters, okay, one of the big conversations we have with our clients, just like you do, is what brings you in the most money? That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to be focusing on the pennies. I'm going to be focusing on the dollars. And so part of that, almost every plumber, they make a lot of money in tankless hot water heaters, converting from a regular traditional hot water heater to a tankless. It's their biggest ROI. So we go out and we'll say, okay, through topical relevance and all the different things that we've been doing in schema, which now all of a sudden has become mainstream. Let's all write about topical relevance. Okay, let's go out and do that. So we will go out, Mr. Client, and say, we're going to write how many articles? I think the last tankless hot water heater cluster we did was 22 articles. So we wrote 22 articles, all about all the different variables and all the different topical relevance about tankless hot water heaters. We linked them all internally together, and then we all internally linked them to the main tankless hot water heater page. So you basically build a hub. And it was just crazy. This is the first one that I'd sold. I upsell these to my clients. So I upsold it, sold it for $400 to my plumber. At the time we started it, the tankless hot water heater page, I think, was ranking for like 16 keywords, very basic stuff, not really ranking first position or anything, which we weren't really going for first position. The goal of the content cluster was to have that tankless hot water heater page rank for more terms. Well, after 30 days, it was ranking for like 120 terms. So it gained over 100 new keyword terms that now goes along with that. So and the biggest one that took off was the solar. How does solar and tankless hot water heaters work? Where should I place my tankless hot water heater so I can take advantage of solar? So we even did a secondary cluster just around solar and tankless hot water heaters, because we saw during that one cluster that little term or those terms get more searches every single month, especially for my, this is a Texas plumber. And so, it's all about stuff like that. And so, we went in and we did a cluster around that. But anyways, needless to say that he actually, even in Texas, started out ranking the biggest brand for tankless hot water heaters, because we had 4 or 5 articles about different brands. This brand specializes in this. They do very good in this. They don't do so good in this. And it was amazing. This guy now, I think we're on our 7th cluster with this plumber, because he just he couldn't believe it. And that was our ticket too, because we'd seen this on our testing sites. What do I do if I write 5 articles about this one thing in different variables? We knew we were going to see some keyword cannibalization. We knew that was there. How do I internally link all of them together? Because you don't want to use the same internal link. Another mistake I see people do. And if you have an internal link that says, solar works great with tankless hot water heaters, and now that link goes to a solar page, perfect. But what we're also seeing is that link will go to another page that doesn't have anything to do with solar. And so it's like, whatever. But anyways, when you're talking about a cluster and you're talking about, I call it local dominance, you can really do a lot of freaking cool things. And this is all because of AI. As an agency, I could never afford this. I would have to charge him $1,000 for that cluster, because we were paying $15 to $20 per article.
Right.
Now, with AI and with all the topical relevance tools that we have, we can specifically say, well, these are the 22 topics. We're going to go out and write 22 articles. We're going to put them all through Grammarly Pro. We're going to make sure they're all linked together and all that stuff. And yeah, it's probably the biggest thing our content team does now. I think just in the month of October, we're doing 13 clusters. So, that's awesome, because like I said, our clients are eating it up. If our medical spas, if they want to do a cluster around Botox, or they want to do a cluster around, cool sculpting, or they want to, those are the kind of conversations that we love to have nowadays with our clients, and saying, hey, look, let's go after one thing. What do you want to dominate? Where do you make your most money? Let's go after that. Screw all this other stuff just to provide content to provide content. Let's go after some meat on the bone and get you some money. So yeah, so that's my
So
favorite.
when you talk about these clusters, you said, for example, that you made 22. So were these 22 content pieces made live in one day, or you staggered it over a period of time?
Yep, all one day. Yep.
All one.
We stopped drip feeding about a year and a half ago when we saw the problems with indexing. And so I would rather have and you have to adjust your sitemap. My biggest thing is check your sitemap. Make sure your sitemap is set to last modified. Most sitemaps are set to alphabetical. And so your about page gets hit every single time. But if you do last modified, then it's, like I said, it's the last page you either added or modified. That's the ones you want crawled. So when Google does come back to our sites, which we don't know how often, I'm assuming every couple weeks. But even when they come back, does stuff get indexed? Blah blah. That's a whole different conversation. But we stopped drip feeding because I never want Google to come back on Wednesday and my stuff is set to go out on Friday. Well, shit. So, especially when they're all internally linked together, you want to throw them all up there.
Right. That obviously that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now out of so of course these pages are going, or these articles are going live on a blog section, and let's say on a blog section you have one page which would, the main page would hold 10 or 12 articles, and when you have multiple clusters, those content gets pushed on page 2, 3, 4 of the blog. So does that dilute some authority of the cluster or no?
No, because we use the Avada theme. That's the main theme we use. And one of the things I love about that theme is I can select a category and hide it from the blog roll. So I don't want 22 articles in the blog roll. You go to blog and you reach, tankless. So yeah, we hide probably 20 articles. We'll show 2. No, that doesn't do anything at all as far as the blog roll. The biggest thing people need to remember is the main nav, sidebar nav, footer nav are pretty much ignored by Google. Pretty much, they're not going to find your new thing because of your main nav.
Right.
And we've all done tests. Like one of the big tests that we always run is putting the locations thing up at the main nav and listing at least the locations you have your GBPs at. Those seem to work better than, especially if it's a new city with a new GBP. But we also write so much supporting content, especially a new location and a press release, that Google has no problem finding that for sure. So, but yeah, no, we still want to make it look good from the public side. So we still will hide a lot of that cluster, but they're still interlinked together. So once Google hits one, it's going to hit the other, the other, the other, the other, the other. So, that's the biggest thing.
Now, when you are building these clusters, does the placement of the internal links, does it matter? Do we need to do it from the paragraph 1, paragraph 2? Because a lot of people come with this confusion. My link should be in the first para, my link should be in the third line. Is this something real or no?
Contextual links, like Salterra's rule, is 5 sentences before the first link. I want Google to get an understanding before it now goes the other page.
Right.
Think about how a bot works. Okay. So, and again, this is something that, and the only reason I have this kind of opinion is just through testing. So if a bot comes to a brand new blog and it hits an internal link and that bot goes over to this internal link, and, my idea is I want as much of my content to be understood before it links out. So, and we've played with this. So, and my rule, or our rule in Salterra, is we have one link to the main page, the money page. We have one link to another related blog, whether it be plus or minus. And then we have one link to the GBP. Okay. So that's our standard right there. We also include FAQ and author boxes to every single thing we do now. So if you look at Salterra site, you're going to see my FAQ and my author box almost on every single page. And people ask, why do you do that? I said, again, Google's coming and crawling a page. So one of the things and one of the ways we have started getting people help outside the helpful content update is being that more trustworthy, more authoritative,
More
writing
signals.
Exactly. So, and so by putting, and I don't say about Salterra, I say, why trust Salterra? I don't want to tell you about us. I want you to trust us. And
Right.
so that's why it's on every single page. So we also, use an internal link to go to the about page. Who does that? So I want people to see everything from that page and make a decision. But yeah, so they're all internally linked together. There's different anchors for different, purposes. We actually pre-plan our clusters, so we know what anchors we're going to do on every single page, which page those are going to anchor to. We know which anchors we're going to send to the money page. And then typically we'll do a press release when the cluster is done, and that'll start the whole process. Is I'll send a press release link to one of the clusters, one of the start of the clusters, and let it start doing its thing. But again, I think that's the only way, because we have such a small amount of time for Google to crawl our websites, that I don't want them to no longer do one article about toilet leaks, one article about a faucet leak, one article about no more. I mean, we are so strict on how we write content nowadays. We have 2 meetings a week and just about content now. And we never did that before. We were like everybody else. We were spending, $5 to $10 grand a month on backlinks. We were spending, $5 to $10 grand a month on content. And, when we started figuring out what we can actually do on a more scalable system, the bad thing about backlinks, and I'll never be a negative backlink guy, but the same backlink that was $30 a year and a half ago is $150 now, and the backlink's not any different. It's probably lost a little bit of power.
Yeah, it probably sucks more.
Exactly. And so, I understand people raise prices, but when people raise prices, people like me get creative, and we start using things like SEO Neo. And, I love building Web 2s. I have a whole staff that does nothing but Web 2s, and we build out, our own link wheel systems, so we're pretty much niched down. So, so we're always constantly, just because we have clients in one space, those clients in all the spaces get to take advantage of what we build on the backside. So.
Okay. Right. Now, what are your thoughts on balancing SEO with user experience, and how do you find sweet spot between ranking high and meeting user expectations?
I think there's a couple things. So one of the things that we're very adamant about is making sure that we are paying attention to dwell time on page, bounce rate, especially if it's bouncing from a money page. We didn't typically used to spend a lot of time on that a few years ago, but one of my big things nowadays is the very first thing we look at a client, especially if the client's already get traffic, is I'm going after the CRO side. I'm going to see how can I improve conversions on the traffic they're already getting. So if you're already getting 1,000 hits a month and you want to rank better, that's fine. I'll help you rank better, but I'm going to try to get more conversions out of that 1,000 hits a month. Right. And a lot of people don't even look at that, especially on our industry. I've even had people tell me, well, all my job is to get them to number one. No. If you think that's all your job is, then somebody's going to come up behind you like me and take them. Because, your job's to get them number one, but your job's to get them to convert. Your job's to get them to call, fill out a form. The conversations, we don't talk keyword rankings with my clients on our strategy calls. We have a section of that, but if they want to, after the cluster talks, but typically we're going after traffic conversions. Are we getting the right leads? Are you still getting a bunch of spam? All that type of stuff that frustrates.
More of the SXO, which now we tend to call. So it's more about search experience optimization, right?
Exactly. You have to look at both. You can't just say, well, look, Mr. Client, I got you from 300 hits a month to 1,000. And he's sitting there going, that's awesome. I'm getting no calls, or I'm getting, 8 out of 10 calls are spam, and so when you don't have those conversations, they really don't care what you did to get them somewhere. They just want leads, and they want quality leads. And so, I tell people that I'm a brand builder. I'm a lead generator. SEO is a part of it, but I'll run pay-per-clicks on most of my clients, and they don't even know it, just because not only do I want the data, the live data, but I also want them to start getting some leads, because even though I told them it's going to take this long, you always get those calls in month 3 saying, I've been paying you for 3 months and blah, so you're starting to lose the focus of the project. And so, if they're paying me $2,000 a month, I'll take $200 or $300 and do some very, very sharpshooter pay-per-click, probably Bing, where I can freaking take advantage of a platform that hardly anybody does. And it always seems to be better that way. And so I want people just to leave me alone to do what I do. And the only way to do that is to get them leads as quick as possible.
Right.
So whether it's through conversion changes, and I'll tell people, we need to change your blue buttons to a yellow. What? Like, trust me, let's just test this, and we'll change the buttons to yellow, and all of a sudden they'll see a 15% increase in clicks.
So do you do a lot of do you do a lot of A/B split testing as well?
All kinds, and especially if I'm running ads, I'll test the button colors on my landing pages all the time, and I'll say, hey, Bob, I'm getting really good luck with these green buttons. Let's just test some stuff, and so we'll do that. And I do that a lot. So
okay. Let's talk a bit about, let's dive deep into the schema markup and content silo. Of course, you discussed, but schemas can sometimes be complex for beginners. What advice would you give to someone starting with schemas, and any go-to tool you recommend?
Schema is one of those things that most people don't do because of the time it takes to do it. And we're not talking plugin schema. If you've got plugin schema and you say you've got schema, you've got the same schema three other million websites that have. You don't have schema. What people don't understand about schema is a way, in my opinion, and it was designed by the search engines themselves. It's the only code that they ever did themselves. People need to understand that. There's a reason for that. And I believe it was designed to organize the internet. Okay, so I think at some point they knew how big this animal was going to get. And they were saying, if we had a code that can say, if I search Terry Samuels SEO and I've got 100,000 results, how can I bring a lot of those into one spot? So me as the search engine, I don't have to go to all these different pages to find out about Terry Samuels. And so when you look at schema that way and you say, okay, this page is about X, I want to go out and find everything I can about X. And then here's the founder. The founder's, Terry, he's done all this other stuff. He's got all these things out there that he knows about. And, it's a way for Google to sit there and say, man, I crawl this page. Here's all my citations on my homepage. There's, 200 citations. So automatically Google's relating those to me. They're still out there, page 5, 6, 7, wherever they're at on, citation land. But I brought them all in so Google can find them. Google can relate them to me, to my brand. That's what I want. Right. And I'm giving Google more information in schema than I'm ever giving on the public side of the website. So, and that's why people don't do it. It's a time-consuming thing. I've given away my templates. I've had people buy my templates. People have stole my schema from Salterra site, and they just don't put in the work to make it work. That's the thing. They still half-ass it. And with schema, you don't half-ass it. I'm telling you, it'll take a while. I've got a project right now. I get hired to do a lot of schema for people. I'm doing this law firm in LA. I've been working on it for 2.5 weeks now. This is a month project, 1 month, but they've got 17 attorneys, 12 locations, so we're bringing all this stuff into their law firm website. And so that's what schema does. So and you also have to understand too, schema's in the head. Don't ever put it in the footer. Why would you put it in the footer? But the schema's in the head. And I truly believe that if your schema gives enough information about the page they're getting ready to crawl, now it ignores the crawl errors, because WordPress, especially anything PHP, is very, very tough for search engines to crawl. PHP is a dirty language compared to like HTML, where everything's just vertical. So when you can have your schema right in your head, and now it hits this, whether it be Thrive theme or Elementor or whatever, Google's going to have a better understanding of what that page is, even though they're going to hit the same errors, the same problems, because it's in the schema. Okay. So And we've kind of proven this over and over again. I've got an entire website that's ranking with just schema, including local pages, including, service pages. It's because the search engines understand it. I didn't tell it is the page, but instead of putting the content on the front side of the page, I put the content in the schema, and Google ate it up. And I just did a .NET version of it, and I'm probably going to kill it because I'm getting some keyword cannibalization. But because my schema only site's 5 years old, and so I did a .NET one about a year ago. Still had the same results, but now I'm starting to see some cannibalization. I just wanted to see if it would still kind of index and start giving me some power, so to speak. But yeah, so I'm probably actually going to kill it this weekend. And I don't want to mess up my original schema only site. That's the whole thing. So, but yeah, so I think it's a way to organize and tell Google more about the web page they're getting ready to crawl. So, and it's a way to build your brand. It's a way to build your personal brand. Like after this one here, this will be a link I put in my schema. I mean, that's, anything that you do that you can introduce Google to is a good thing. Don't put negative shit in schema. Don't go put your 1-star review in schema. But I think that's why I'm so adamant about it, because again, you're providing a piece of language that they definitely understand. They wrote it. Okay. Everything else, we're just guessing. I think we've done tests where I can put a gibberish thing at the bottom of a page to see if Google picks up that gibberish thing. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But when I do that in schema, it always picks it up, and quick. So, so again, that's why I think it's such a good system. And, the people that are doing it right, I definitely feel are leaps and bounds above everybody else. And especially about the number of keywords you can rank for that page. Like I said, we were doing, entities and semantics and topical relevance and schema way before it became mainstream, because we would do knows about, we would do same as, we would do abouts and mentions, I would list my top 5 competitors and knows about in schema. I would never do that on the public side, but Google knows that they're my competitors, so why not put them in there? This is who I'm competing with, so align me with them type of thing. And so, but I think that's the reason why you have to go and do the schema right, is because there's a specific purpose for it. If you just half-ass it, you're going to have half-ass results, But if you take the cool thing about schema is once you take the time to do it, you really don't have to go back maybe every quarter and kind of update some stuff that might have shown up or whatever. Minus article schema. Article schema is different. But I think once you have everything done, then now you just keep moving on and just watch what that schema does for you. So I've got all kinds of freaking examples that we've done with schema tests. I've been testing schema and doing schema for 7 years now. 2017 is my first schema project. So, and I just found it on accident. I went to schema.org and I literally spent a week in schema.org testing what I could add to it. And back then, schema.org used to give you some templates to play with, so you can, and of course I'm a coder guy, so it didn't frustrate enough. But when you miss a comma, you miss a parentheses and you can't find the freaking thing, it's just like, so yeah, I built a tool to help fix that. But I mean, I'm really, really passionate about schema. If people understood exactly what it does and what it can do for you and your clients, you would be amazed. And that's why we do a lot of it for people.
Okay. And any tools you recommend for any go-to tools you recommend for schema creations or schema testing for that matter?
Well, obviously the schema validator for testing. That's the only one I trust. I don't trust Google's or anything else. Schema.org is probably the best place to see what you can include in schema. Depending on what type you pick, you can include things that you can in other schemas. So you want to play with that. I mean, Salterra site, people steal my schema all the time. It is minified, so you're going to have to know how to unminify it. And no, I won't tell you. But I think the biggest thing as far as tools is ChatGPT is really good at stuff like this, especially around article schema, because it's again super basic. That's all these tools are, super basic. But if you have a site-wide schema you did manually, and you have a service schema you did manually, and you're just using ChatGPT for article schema, that's fine. No big deal. But I think as far as, there's some tools out there, Content Sprout, InLinks. There's some good ones out there that help with schema
Right.
too. So, but I think the biggest thing with schema is the research. As soon as you get a brand, Google that brand, see what's out there about the brand. And then we typically will go 4 or 5 pages in, and then we'll bring all those into the schema. You'll see when it starts to get kind of outside your search, when it starts either not making sense or starts bringing in other things. But I think if you're a professional, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, all these professional services, schema has the most bang for the buck with those. So,
Okay.
especially lawyers, because there's typically a lot of stuff on the internet about lawyers, and so you go out and find it.
Okay. Now, any schema courses you recommend?
I have one.
Okay, that's good way to plug in right now.
Yeah, so I fought doing a schema course for a long time, just because I really, like I said, I've given away my templates at conferences and stuff, and it kind of gets disheartening when people don't kind of use what you give them. It's kind of like, then what the hell did I even give it to you for, type of thing. But about a year ago, I started building a schema course. And so I finished it like 3 months ago. It's the most comprehensive schema course out there. It's like 15 modules, 51 lessons. But it's set up to where you don't have to go through the whole thing. If you want to just do ecom schema, there's an ecom section. If you want to get into local, there's a local section. And I go into, with videos, walkthroughs, I go into why you want to do one thing or another. And really just trying to teach people the thought process of schema, so they better understand it. Yeah, it was, so I released it. I really haven't promoted it that much.
Yeah.
Just mainly because, I want people to, use what they buy. My JVZoo account, I got so much crap in my accounts that I've bought and never used. So I didn't want something like that. So I've been teaching on-page class for 2 years now. I have a class that I teach on-page live. But part of that class is schema, and I had one of my students and said, you really need to make a course out of this. So I blame him for doing it, for making me do it. But yeah, I don't recommend anybody else. I mean, Clint Butler's got another basic course out there. Clint's one of my best friends. He's probably the one that I've been doing the most with schema. Him and I have done a lot of stuff together as far as testing. He's in different niches that I'll never be in, gambling and rehab and those type of niches. So, that schema gets pretty freaking serious in those niches. So, but I put the link in the chat, for my training.
I will share it with the once this goes live. Right, I will do that.
But
Got it.
yeah, I think just be careful with, like, most of the YouTube stuff is very basic.
Okay.
You want to stick around JSON LD. You don't really want to get into microdata and there's 3 or 4 different types of schema, which I go into. But the JSON LD is the one that we have found that Google, Yahoo, and Bing like the best. And it's the easiest to work in. So I actually started in microdata, and it's okay for a developer, but it's not good for trying to teach a VA.
I know.
Write it. But JSON's really good. But yeah, if you're going to go down the road of schema, I don't know. I personally think it's the one thing that, we can definitely do for a client that's going to have the biggest bang for the buck, because all we're doing is introducing a different code to the search engines that's going to give them more information about the page. So, and it can always be better that way. So, and we use it in a bunch of different variables. I teach people how to put schema in images. I teach people how to put schema in Web 2 properties. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. It's not just WordPress or whatever.
Okay. Now, for businesses with a limited SEO budget, what are the priority schema elements they should focus on to see a noticeable impact?
Noticeable impact are going to be the top two. It's going to be same as and knows about. Okay, so same as means just what it says. If you're a brand and you have 10 different 10 different links on the search results for that brand, that's the same as. Knows about is now what this page knows about. So if it's a web design page, it knows about web design, web development, WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. You can start naming them out. ChatGPT will help you with all this. The biggest thing about knows about, is that you don't want to include I call it stupid shit. So yeah, even though you're in web design, you probably know about PayPal and invoicing and cash and checks. And don't include all that stuff. Just keep it strictly within that realm of, topical relevance, so to speak. And those are the biggest two. The next biggest two would be the mentions and abouts, which is where you can include some of the entity stuff, some of the, semantic stuff, because now you're getting into, web design also mentions SEO. It also mentions internet marketing. It also mentions graphic design. And those are entities around web design. So, so those are the four big ones. But same as and knows about are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, especially around your pages. If you do like I do, I build stacks. I build, citations. I do all this stuff. So if I build a stack for a specific service, those stack links is same as is only on that page. So it's not a site-wide thing. So be careful between site-wide and per page. Site-wide is just like your 50,000 foot level. Salterra, we're in these 50 states. We have these main services. Here's some of the awards we've won. It's strictly on a brand level. Then when we get into the individual service pages or personal pages, then the schema changes, but they stack on top of each other. So if you go to one of my local pages, you'll see like 3 or 4 different schemas stacked on each other.
Okay. Now you also talk about PR stacking before, and of course, can you share how this tactic works in practice and why is it effective?
PR stacking is I'm a stacker. I tell people all the time. I love stacking things. I think as far as link building, and this is when I used to sell backlinks all the time, is I would try to teach people about how to stack backlinks. There's a bunch of different ways, but I'm typically a brand is tier 1, a brand keyword is tier 2, and then a keyword is tier 3. So we do 3 levels within Salterra. And that happens in link building and it happens in press releases. So one of the things that I was trying to figure out with press releases, I did this test about 3 years ago, because I like the idea of press releases, but they were kind of expensive. The links that you would get would fall off pretty quickly. Typically after about 60 days, you probably only have about 30% of the links indexed anymore. And it was frustrating because at that time, it took me a ton of, because I was strictly a lot of lawyers and medical. So these press releases would take a long time to get approved, a couple of weeks from some of my clients. And so it was the old frustrating part. So anyway, so what I started doing is I started saying, okay, well, I want my website or the client's website to become the host of the press release. So I'm going to do a blog post. So I do a press release blog post on my site or the client site. And in that blog post, I'm internally linking to the pages that I want this press release to take advantage of, plus the GBP, plus I'm doing a GBP embed. So once I have the blog post done and I have that blog post URL, I'll go to a service, AB Newswire. It's typically the first one I go to. AB Newswire, I'll now take that same press release I just built in the blog post. I'll copy and paste it into the press release in AB Newswire. And now I'll do my anchors different. So I'll have a branded anchor to that to that blog post. I'll have a branded anchor to a GBP, typically the long URL because I can manipulate that plus string. And then I'll always typically have another branded anchor to either the home page. Sometimes I'll send it to the main blog page. Sometimes I've sent it even to the sitemap page, the HTML sitemap page. But that's typically the way I start the press release. So the reason why I like AB Newswire is I typically get the published links within 6
24
hours.
hours.
Yeah.
Okay, 6.
So super quick, especially if I do the press release in the morning. But then I take that press release, all those links that get all those URLs they have, and I put them in a spreadsheet. And I don't do anything for 48 hours. But after 48 hours, I'll put in that title of the press release in Google, and I'll see which ones showed up as far as power and indexing. Well, then I'll take those 2 links that showed up power, whichever one I'm just looking for 2, maybe 3. And then I'll go to like EIN Newswire. EIN Newswire I like them because they're fast. I don't like them because they only limit me to 3 links at all. And that's kind of frustrating. But I'll do now branded terms. So I'll do Salterra web design will be a branded term to the AB Newswire press release link. Okay. So, and I'll do 2 of those links within EIN Newswire. And then I'll do 1 raw link back to the raw anchor of just my homepage, just salterrasite.com. And then once I get those responses, again, I wait 48 hours and I see which ones are the top 2. And then I typically go to 38 Digital. 38 Digital is Randy's best press release out there, hands down. And I'll go to Randy's, and these will be exact match. So it'll be, web design company. We'll link up to the EIN Newswire one, and then obviously it's stacked. So
Right.
And these all have a map embed. So by the time I'm done with a typical stack, there'll be 1,500 referring domains about that. So I'm getting 1,500 embeds. I've got 1,500 links to the GBP, typically the long URL. And the cool thing about it now is that my press releases now are lasting over a year because they're all combined and talking to each other. And I can go back to that blog post anytime, and I can change those links whenever I want. So if I first started, I can manipulate those. I can add another paragraph and add another link or whatever.
Right.
And then I typically will keep track of the top 10 links of those press releases, and I'll throw them over to my link side, and they'll be building backlinks to those, whether it be Web 20s or whatever. I don't care. Web 2s. I don't care. But yeah, we're starting to see, and then maybe 3 or 4 months later, I'll do just one more press release just to kind of throw in there and mix it all up again. But it's still an upsell. These stacks can be expensive. I think about $750, but you don't have to do a press release every freaking quarter now. So you actually save money in the long run. And again, it's an upsell for me. I always upsell. But the whole thing is with the press release stacking is we've really found it to help not just the location page, but the GMB specifically. And I've had people that are really big in GMBs. I don't ever claim to be a GMB expert like some of them out there, but I've had them message me and say, "Damn, your press release stack really works." And I said, "I know it does. We tested this over and over and over again."
Okay.
And it's one of the first things we do. Like if I take on a new client, I'm doing a press release on my Salterra site, and then I'm starting the process already. So I'm going to AB Newswire, announcing the new strategy with this new client. I've got their map embed, my map embed. I'm already starting the process. And the first month I can sit there and say, okay, now we've built this. Let's strategize and figure out how we're going to do better with this. And so, yeah,
Right.
it's I think anytime you look at stacking things, it's all how you connect them. So, one of the biggest mistakes that I see, one of the reasons I don't sell backlinks anymore is people don't understand how to use anchors. They think they need, go out and get 500 referring domains for this, SEO anchor. Well, is that really going to help you if you only got 300 referring domains going to your homepage and now you have 500 referring domains going to your SEO page? Is that really what you want to do? So, yeah. Anchor text diversity is a real thing. But yeah, I think anything that I do always has to have a return on investment. So,
okay.
And that's one of the reasons why we got rid of buying a whole bunch of backlinks, because it was harder. It was getting harder and harder for me to show that this money that they had spent, again, an upcharge, had a good result. as far as quickness, so when I have people order backlinks from me now, I tell them, I'm like, you probably won't see anything for 4 to 6 months. That's,
Right.
you might see something sooner. That's great. But on the most part, we're seeing 4 to 6 months to see, at least a backlink result of a normal I'm talking normal backlink, not something like, PetSmart.com or something. So,
So we just overshoot time. So I'm just gonna take few more minutes of yours. I know but let's talk about SEO Spring Training. I mean, what inspired you to start SEO Spring Training?
we went. This goes back even to my house flipping days. I used to do a lot of talks and a lot of conferences and masterminds around different things. And when I came into this business, I mentioned Rand Fishkin before. I went to a conference. Gosh, it was probably 6 years ago now. Probably 7 years ago. I didn't have a whole lot of money, but this conference was very expensive only because I got a chance to meet Rand Fishkin. That was why I bought this ticket. And it was kind of expensive. And so I went to the conference. I really didn't pay much attention, didn't really care what the conference was. I just wanted to spend some time and mainly just thank Rand. I just, because I really credit him for changing the way I thought about this business. And I love the way he teaches. But and so I went to this conference, and again here, and since this is a long time ago, there's no fault of Rand. So Rand, don't yell at me. But he didn't realize there was people there to meet him, and he left, and we never got to meet each other or the people that bought this ticket. And so that was my first like SEO world conference, and I was like, oh man, well that sucks. It was in Dallas. And so I, came back and, I went to another one that I was recommended from a friend of mine, and I went there, and the conference was great, but I didn't really feel like the value was there, because a lot of times when people think about conferences, you got to think about the flight there, the hotels, the ticket prices, the food. I mean, it's a whole thing. So just because you pay $1,500 for a ticket, it's probably a $5,000 conference when you include everything. And so I'm all about value, and people that know me, people that hire me, that's one of the reasons they hire me for, is because I overdo everything. That's just the way it is. So I came back from this other conference. So like I said, the conference was fine, but they didn't include lunches. It was very hard to go out and get lunch and come back on time. I mean, those were the frustrations. And so I came back and told Elizabeth, I said, let's do a conference. And she's like, really? I said, sure. So we did the first one we did. I just knew a few people that I brought in to speak. I didn't really know. I knew Kyle Roof. Kyle used to live by us. Clint Butler, obviously, Marty Marion. So that, Michelle, or, there's tons of them. Anyways, so I had a 2-day conference. There were 65 people. I think we had 10 speakers, 5 a day. And it was really cool. So, and everybody loved it. We provided lunches, and not just lunches, really freaking good lunches. We provided a lot of networking opportunity. And so the very first one was 6 years ago. So this is our 6th one coming up. So 5 years ago. But it really started becoming a thing because the second year we did it, it was a little bit bigger. I think we were still about 90 people or so. The third year, COVID hit. And COVID hit like literally 3 weeks before our event was supposed to start.
Oh.
And so we actually got an email from the governor of Arizona saying they shut everything down. It's like, ooh, okay. And so we're freaking out because now and there was going to be 140 people there that year. And so the first thing I think of as a business owner is, how the F am I going to refund everybody's money? I mean, we've already paid for the hotel. We've already paid for the caterers. We've already paid for marketing. Most of the money is gone. And so, Elizabeth and I were like, okay, well, let's turn it digital. We didn't even know what that meant. And so, so I went out and I found a software that I could have up to 1,000 people a day in this software to watch conferences. And so we took our 2-day event and it became 8 days. I had 72 speakers. We had almost 800 people come through the digital side. It literally happened at the right place at the wrong time because of COVID, but people didn't have anything else to do. So I was contacting speakers from Australia, from the UK, from good old Campbell over in Scotland. I was contacting all these speakers, say, hey guys, I want to do this, and everybody was on board. It was one of the coolest things. Well, that became like our reputation, because not only did we not give up and say F you to everybody, but we turned it into something that it's still talked about today. I still think I own the most recordings of the most speakers in this industry, because I recorded them all and I have everything. And so that kind of set us up. So when we came out of COVID the next year, we just did a little mastermind, because I was gun shy. And people know the story if they've ever talked to me, but it took almost 5 months to get $60,000 back from the Marriott. And, because we couldn't go on with it, they actually tried to hit my Amex during COVID for the last payment. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Not only are you not getting the last payment, I want a refund for it all. And we ended up getting it. But, 50, 60,000 bucks for a small business is a lot of freaking money to sit there and wait on. But we didn't give up. We were not going to freaking screw anybody. That was my big thing. And in my opinion, we provided so much value that week that people just now, when we did the mastermind the next year, that sold out really quick. It was like 35 people. And then we did, last year was the first year we came back big again, or 2 years ago. But yeah, so it's the first week in May in 2025. It's in, I don't know, our specialty is networking opportunities and bringing in speakers that probably haven't spoken in the U.S. before. And so that's one of the things that we're pretty known for. So we've got some pretty good announcements. We're going to start announcing them in about a month, about middle of November.
Okay.
The committee's getting together next week to start talking about the final list of speakers. We literally had over 80 people want to speak. So, that's always been a constant too, is we get a lot of people that want
Right.
to speak at our event.
Right.
But yeah, it's in my opinion, I think it is the best SEO event in the country. There's Rockstars, which is kind of like our sister event. We kind of do things combined together. That's in Vegas here in about 3 weeks. And we always make sure we're keeping them separate enough so people can attend both if they want. But yeah, that was my whole thing of why I wanted to start it. It's all about value. I tell people that if you don't get what you came to the conference for, tell me and I'll get you in touch with the person that can help you. So I've got a very, very strong network. So
Right. And it's a very inspiring story as well. Of course, having 800 people is massive, of course.
Exactly. So
Yeah. Right. Okay, now just final section. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the future of SEO and the tools. So what are your thoughts on using AI tools for content creation?
I think AI is revolutionized content creation. And we're not talking just words, we're talking images and video and the whole 9 yards. But I do still think that we've got a long way to go to be automated, so to speak. I still think that I believe in personalizing whichever AI tool I'm using to the brand or to the person or whoever I'm writing about. The main reason is because I want people to understand who this is talking. I want it to be talking from this medical spa owner and not some machine. I do think that it's going to get better. I do not think that it's going to replace search. It's one of the things that I haven't seen it yet. And I look at people around me that don't have anything to do with this business and how they're searching. They're still searching the same way they were a year, 2, 3 years ago. I tell people the story about voice search. Voice search was supposed to take over the world. And it never did. I think AI will change the game, but I think if you utilize AI the right way, kind of like what we're doing with clustering and, writing content that not only helps people, but, helps, become an authority for your space. So you don't have to, so that user doesn't have to go to another site and another site and another site. I think with AI, you can do that and you can do it very successfully.
Right.
Salterra, we haven't dug into the image side of things yet, at least not as a scalable thing, just because of time. So from an agency standpoint, we're looking at different tools. We like Content Sprout, ZimWriter. There's all kinds of stuff that we like and use, but it still has to have that human touch. So especially, I don't like to get the questions, hey, what's this in there about me? This is especially about when you're talking lawyers and medical, anything in the, your money, your life space, you really have to have that human touch, because it's still an inaccurate scraper. If you just do a broad scraper, top 10 plumbers in Dallas, or 10 plumbers in Dallas, even not even top, it's pretty good about the first 5, but then it starts to struggle because it's just scraping. So, but I think if you introduce it to what it's scraping and who it's scraping for is the big difference. So,
Are there any particular new AI tools you are excited about?
Zista, Zizta, is probably my new tool that I'm excited about. It was given to me to test and try, and it actually comes from the same person that bought topicalrelevance.com, which was my go-to tool to teach people how to do abouts and mentions and schema. It's a pretty cool tool so far. And again, I take these things and break them. That's my whole goal in life, is to break tools. But this one's pretty solid. We're doing some testing on the bulk writing, compared to, like, we're a Chat GPT house, because we teach Chat GPT how to be our bitch, basically. But so we're comparing some of the bulk writing, just like we do with Content Sprout, ZimWriter, and everything. We do have different applications for our affiliate sites and lead gens compared to client sites. So, we always test, but those are the 3 I'm looking at right now. I like a lot. Some of the ones we've tried, we've tried some stuff in Search Atlas. That was okay. There's some things Search Atlas is doing pretty decent. I'm excited about some of the stuff coming. One of my favorite tools, I think anybody that's in the map business needs to be using LeadSnap. And LeadSnap's doing some pretty cool stuff with AI, as far as review responses, question and answers, all the stuff that you would do within the GBP. So yeah, I love this stuff. I mean, I follow people on Facebook. There's some people that we're bringing to spring training. We're actually going to have a whole AI breakout room this year. So,
Right.
So we're going to have a whole freaking room just dedicated to AI. Because I'm that adamant about it. Then there's some people that you really need to follow, and there's some people that are trying to get there, but there's some people that are really taking leaps and bounds in this stuff already, and and doing good stuff in our industry. So that's one of the things I like about it. And there's people out there that are just loading up content just to load up content. Whatever. That's not us. So, I have a little bit more pride in what I'm producing.
We also have moved from content creation for AI to a lot of things, of course, as I did present at that time. So we are doing a lot of stuff, right? I love doing all those stuff. But I believe AI is more how well you are able to feed. So that's the key to getting the right answers, I believe.
Yeah, I agree too. And I've got a brand new client, and this client writes in stories. So I'm doing an interesting test right now with ChatGPT to see how well it can write in story format versus typical blogs or pages or whatever. So I'm having fun with those prompts. So that's my app. I call it my afternoon work. After 3 o'clock, I shut down on all my client stuff, and I just work on Salterra type stuff, AI type stuff. And so last night when I was watching baseball, I was sitting there playing with these storyboard prompts. And I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. Oh, this sucks. It's in there yet. So I do like doing that type of stuff. But you're right. It's, I think prompt engineering is a real thing.
Yes, it is a real thing.
And, but you also have to remember, a lot of prompts I get people to send me to test. I'm like, gee whiz, man, this prompt's like this long. I could do the same thing this long.
Right.
So, I think you can also, like a lot of things, take it to the extreme, so, but yeah, I had a guy send me a new AI tool yesterday he wants me to work on. So I'll test it this weekend. But I think it's really exciting, especially since I don't have to pay $30 a freaking article anymore. I mean, my content bill was just outrageous because I knew how and what we wanted to write content about. it was just a cost factor. That's what it was, And I believed in all of our content writers I was buying content from are now editors within Salterra. I've hired them all, and so and that was the whole thing. Is like, I love the way you guys write, but I think we could do better with this. And so it's pretty cool to see their transformation also, because some of these writers were really good. I mean, I had 2 writers that were specifically medical and legal because they wrote that good. I had 2 writers that were home services. I don't think my roofers even know I do blogs. So why would I put my medical writer and my roofer? So, but no, it was always good.
Yeah. Now, just final 2 questions, very quick. What are your favorite SEO tools?
Oh my gosh. So WordPress wise, the redirection plugin is like my number 1 go-to. I put it on every single site, and it's amazing how many people don't track their 404 errors.
Okay.
It's the quickest way for Google to leave your site is a 404 error. Fastest way. So that's one of them. I'm a huge Link Whisperer guy. I like Link Whisperer. Link Whisperer, especially done right, will really help with the whole internal linking process. I love Lead Snap for my GBPs. 2 main reasons why is because my staff doesn't have to log into anybody's GBP anymore. That used to keep me up at night, getting GBP suspended because I had a staff from whatever country go into the GBP and do changes. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And then the second reason is I really like the whole insights of it. My reporting's all built around Looker Studio, or Data Studio as it used to be called. I hate Google changing names all the time. But yeah, those are probably my go-tos as far as SEO. I don't use Ahrefs anymore because I got frustrated with the pricing structure.
Those credits, right?
Yeah, it's too hard to forecast, and a lot of these tool owners need to realize that when you're paying $109 and $199 a month, and your bills are between $500 and $800 because of credits, agencies typically can't forecast that. And so, especially with mine. So when I looked at cutting money, I cut out Ahrefs and we went over to Search Atlas. We do like Search Atlas for a lot of things. Some things within Search Atlas we don't do, but that's like every tool. I think that's the biggest thing is just, trying to find what, makes me, more optimized, something I can scale, something that's affordable. I still have to look at affordability. No matter how big I get, I will always make sure I'm not wasting money. And people don't realize how much you can waste by these little $39 a month, $69 a month.
Another good tool is SEO Utils. It's a desktop application, but it's beautifully done. Not affiliated with us, but you just pay like $20-$30 for one time. Then you plug in your data for SEO API, or you can rent from them as well. And we have it used for all of the things, and they keep on adding more stuff. So we actually love that software.
Exactly. Some of my favorite Chrome extensions is I love SERPWorks, SERPWOX. It gives a snapshot on the web page, so I use it a lot when I'm talking to my potential clients, because I can show them the different things that Ahrefs does, Moz. It's just a snapshot of that stuff. And then SEO Quake is another go-to of mine for Chrome extension.
Right.
Publer's my big extension for maps.
Right.
But there's a lot of good tools, and like I said, I get the privilege of testing a lot of them, and some of them are really awesome. Some I tell people you're not quite there yet because of this or whatever. The one thing I tell people is each tool is going to give a different result. Especially around local rankings. I like Lead Snap's ranking tool. I like Local Dominator, Local Viking, but they're all different. They're all going to be different. And for me to sit here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and talking to my client in the Bronx and sitting there saying, well, this is what these 3 tools show, and there'll be fluctuations. But when you're in the local space, I think you need to pay attention more to, trends, what's going up, what's going down. Don't worry so much because you're in Scottsdale and you see, oh, I'm number 3 and they're in Bronx and they're number 5. And, it just means you have more work to do. It's not something to argue about. And when you start arguing because somebody Googles themselves on the toilet, that's the first conversation you need to get is stop Googling yourself on the toilet. But I think, tools are exactly what they're supposed to be. If there's ever an accurate tool, people say, oh, I love Google Search Console. Well, Google Search Console is great, but not for ranking. It's on a 3-month rolling average. It's not yesterday's results. And so I think, again, when it comes to tools, find what works for you, find what you can afford that gives you the right results that you can report on. But just remember that you have to take each tool with a grain of salt.
But, what do you read?
Yes. Yep.
So what are your favorite books you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Anything basically around business. There's
anything which influence your thought process.
I think as far as, I love reading SEO books. I love Jason Hennessy's his 2 books. I read anything that comes out about SEO. Some of them obviously are outdated by the time they come out or by the time I get a hold of them or whatever, which is fine. It's still the thought process that I like about books is, they actually get into why they think that way. Kind of the way I built the schema course. I do like books that will take me out of my comfort zone. Buy back your time. I can't remember Dan. I think Dan something. Anyways, buy back your time. Anything that has one of the things that Salterra is doing right now. This is our 14th year, and we're still not really good at that front side lead generation. So we can fulfill anything. Fulfillment's never been a problem for us. But I don't have, as a business owner, a forecastable system that say I can get 10 leads a month from here, 10 leads a month from here, so on and so forth. I never built a sales team. And there was specific reasons for that, because I came out of, a system with flipping houses that most of my people were salespeople. But this time I didn't do it. It's actually one of my quasi regrets. It's not that I want to build a big sales team, but I would like to have some people just paying attention to that side. So I'm now reading books and going to conferences about scaling, about doing things better. Rank Masters, which is Patrick Shannon's big mastermind group. It probably changed my life as far as an agency this year because it really taught me what I thought I was doing right, that I probably only went halfway through and I needed to go the other half. So Chris Moore's got some good books out there. Carl Allen's got some good books. Carl's about acquisitions, because eventually I'm going to sell this sucker. And so that's something that I want to start learning about now rather than waiting to when I want to sell, so
Right.
If there's things I need to do now to get ready to sell in 2 or 3 or 4 years, I need to know that stuff now. So those are kind of the conferences I've been going to, the books I've been reading. Like I said, buy back your time. Elizabeth's got like 6 books on my shelf I got to read, but it's all about growth. It's all now about growth, personal growth, kind of getting out of my own way. I know I'm not as successful because of me. If I just hire the right people and get the F out of the way, then I'll be a lot more successful. That's what I'm trying to learn now, how to do that.
Absolutely. All right, Terry, thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, your insights have been invaluable. Of course, I myself learned a lot about schema I thought I knew all about. So where can listeners find out more about you and your work?
SalterraSite.com is my main agency site. I also own SEOuniversity.net. That's where I teach things and have my schema course in there. And then, of course, SEOSpringTraining.com is our conference. But SalterraSite.com is my main site. It has all the access to everything there. If you want to go steal my schema or whatever, go for it.
Well, I'll put the link in the description below, so it's easier for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but at least go reverse engineer my site. Go look and see how I do stuff. Go look and see how I do schema. Go look and see how I build pages. You'll learn some things because, like I said, I've tested this stuff for years, and Salterra site's my main testing site. That's where it's a very powerful site, and it's where I can see the biggest results the quickest. So typically, if you go and I have a guy that messages me every couple of weeks and say, "Why did you do this to your blogs?" And so he's kind of following what we're doing because I'm constantly changing and testing things. So, and then in my classes, I announce what we found that works, and I have a couple private Facebook groups. If you want to reach out to me, I can get you into those too. So,
Okay, that's good.
but
Okay, that's all for this episode of the Agency Insider. And remember to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. Until next time, this is Navneet Kaushal signing off. Thank you.
thank you.